Welcome back. It's been a minute.
Hola, me llamo Hector. Yeah, I heard you guys like the traumatized. You talk about the traumatized, and I just want to say I'm a big fan of traumatized. When my father, mi padre, yells at mi madre for not cooking the beans right, and then
Stop.
mi madre
Stop.
throws the chocolate. She throws the chocolate, and mi sister, and then my sister tells me to cállate en la boca, and then I kick the gato, and it traumatized the whole family together.
Why are you Mexican?
Traumatized ties the whole family together, keeps la familia, very close. And so, my name is Hector, and I approve of the traumatized.
I thought you were trying to be an actor. No, we had to appropriate English. That's very perfect.
No, it's just a joke. I was joking about
Just a
traumatized.
joke, you guys. Just a joke.
We can do accents.
You
We can do
go for it,
accents.
man. You do all the accents. I'll stay safe over here.
Oh, people can't handle a joke.
Oh,
All
well.
right,
So it's been a few weeks. How are you
it
feeling?
has. I'm feeling good. Feeling good today. Yeah,
Yeah.
the fatigue has been hitting me pretty hard. I don't know what's wrong with my body. I just have no idea. It's a problem.
Yeah.
Got physical health issues of some sort. I don't know if it's sleep apnea. My roommate said I snore really loud, and then sometimes I'll stop breathing for like a minute,
Oh,
and I guess that's a sign of sleep apnea. So I don't know.
it
Something's
is.
happening. Um, yeah, I get really tired. And so the last 2 weeks I've just been exhausted. So I
Yeah.
started what I did is I started messing around with my medications. Just taking them here, taking them there. And actually I do get energy when I don't take my medications. And I explained that to my doctors, and I was like, I don't know if it's my medications that are causing me to be fatigued, but yeah, it's a struggle.
Keep talking. My screen's gonna go black, but they can
Okay,
still see you.
but yeah, um, that's been the last 2 weeks. That's kind of why we took a break. I've just been kind of out of it and not feeling well. But it's good to be back. Good to have good to have another conversation. It's cool because we've gotten some messages from fans and people who listen, and
Yeah, I
they
didn't think anyone would notice.
I know
That was
it was
nice.
nice. Yeah, yeah. It's we will do our best to keep a weekly schedule, but
Just needed a break.
I got an email, one of those emails from a podcasting network, they were like, you guys have hit a mile, like you guys have done more podcasts at this point than like 90% of podcasters. Did you know that like 90% of podcasters only do about 3 or 4 episodes and then they quit?
Yeah, you were
Um,
telling me that. It makes sense.
and so we've done at this point, I don't know, like 12 or something. But yeah, their podcast network, they hook you up with guests that you can interview, and
Interesting.
so that would be an interest. I was going to bring that up with you, like that'd be an interesting idea. It's really cheap. I think it's like $5.99 a month or something. But but basically, you can be a guest. You can sign up to be a guest for other people's podcasts. But you also
Yeah,
have access. You also have access to like thousands of people who are also podcasters, or people who are willing to be guests on a podcast. And
it's
and
fascinating.
that'd be one way to draw in
Yeah, it'd be cool to
new.
have people, I mean, even like people we know already, like Mandy. I mean, I would love to hear her story.
Huh? Yeah,
And
yeah, we
I
should
mean,
definitely.
yeah, I mean, we've had people reach out wanting to talk about the church experience specifically, um,
Yeah.
which I think is really important to give people that voice because I feel like that's missing big time. Um, but this week we were going
Yeah.
to kind of have a episode in honor of International Women's Day, which happened on the 8th.
Hmm.
So I've been like trying to think of how I want to tell my story,
Yeah.
because it's really intense and it's really personal. But I was thinking I could just speak maybe kind of in chapters and, just tell that portion of it and then pause and then we can talk about it for a second and then move on to the next
Okay.
part.
Yeah, that
Uh,
sounds great. Hey, where does a mansplainer get his water from? Well, actually.
I fucking hate mansplaining. Oh, is that where water comes from?
Oh wow, yeah. Well,
Oh,
actually,
actually,
hey, how's it going? Okay, ruined my friggin' joke, bro. Well, actually, water comes from precipitation in the atmosphere. I don't know if you know this, but there's these things called clouds.
I don't know if you know what water is. It's H2O. Oh, thank you. Thank
Two
you.
hydrogen, it's got two hydrogen molecules and one oxygen molecule. Yeah. Well,
Mm.
actually.
Well, actually, oh God. What, okay, what is that? Why do you think men do that? Like, why? I don't get it. It happens so often.
It really does, doesn't it? I think I think men just don't value women's input, or I think they think women. I think
Don't
a lot of
want,
men just think women don't know as much as them. You know,
which is so
I think
interesting because women tend to like hold more information.
I know. Well, I mean, I will say I think there's different kinds of women. You know, just like there's different kinds of men, and there are some women who really just don't, they're more interested in, I guess, like what would, like just,
Are
pop
you
culture or something.
mansplaining to me?
No, I'm trying to think about
What?
why men do that. And I don't know. I don't know if men just have met
I think
women that, I don't know.
I think men, I mean, there's like a quote by C.S. Lewis about friendship, and he was talking about the importance of his friends. And he was saying he values them because they're educated, because women are simple, because they didn't used to be allowed education. And so I think men
Well,
used
yeah,
to, they used to be
yeah.
able to, like their circle of friends included men who had been exposed to education and like diverse
Yes, that's
thought.
that's what I think that's where I was going. Yeah.
And then, but
And
then
that's and
sometimes,
that's that's literally just because women didn't have access to education, right?
yeah. And I do think men, they feel like more useful. I mean, I do think part of it is ego, but part of it is like men like to solve a problem. And so they think like, oh, I can help here. They want
Yeah.
to be like helpful. They don't realize that it's patronizing sometimes, you know. I don't feel like it's always intentional, but I do think it comes from a condescending place sometimes, most often, and this place that is rooted in this idea that women just aren't as educated and not as knowledgeable because they're not as exposed to the world. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Which like you said, in the past might have actually been true.
right.
But only because
They weren't
women were
allowed.
women were denied access to education, and so, yeah, when you deny someone access to the world and then think they're stupid because they don't, it's kind of like it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like women are so stupid, they don't belong in education. And then you wonder, and then,
God. The perfect thing to launch this episode with is
yeah.
the stupidity of all of that.
But I want to say that before, if you don't mind, before, because I know you're gonna talk a lot this episode, and
Yeah.
before you begin, I just want to say that I wrote a post yesterday, and I was really thinking about it, just how many amazing women I have had in my life,
Hmm.
and you are one of them. Jay is one of them. My mom is one of them, and this wonderful woman named Hallie Reed. Did you ever meet Hallie? She's
No, you've talked about her so much. I don't think I've ever met
she's
her.
God, she's such a great person, man. And she's an occupational therapist at Western Oregon University. She really embodies like that strong woman archetype, but like in such a healthy way. There's no like irony or silliness to it. Like she's like at the top of her game, man. She's well educated. She also has empathy. And this is the other thing, man, that I think, men can get educated.
Hmm.
Where'd you go?
I can hear you. Sorry, my kids are here. I'm just texting them, but just keep
Okay.
talking.
Women just have a natural empathy, man. And like men can get well educated. and still just retain this like kind of cruel thing in their
Absolutely.
being and their personality. Whereas, a lot of women can get well educated, but still retain that warmth, And Hallie is such an
Exemplary.
exemplary like example of that. You know,
Mm,
she's just a warm, caring individual. She cares so much about people's mental health, issues and mental health, the rights of individuals. She's spent much of her life working with individuals with severe mental health issues. And, she fights for them. She fights, it's just, and she also did roller derby, she's a mom now. She has a beautiful little
oh,
girl and her and her wife and like she's literally done it all, man. She's a mother, she's like a fighter, you should have seen her on the roller derby rinks, man. She's beating people out of the way and shit.
she's a
You
bad
know, like
bitch. I love
she's a
it.
badass, but she's also a mother. Like she's doing it all, and she's a professional. Like
Yeah.
she's a professor at Western Oregon University. She leads the entire. She's the head of the department for
Wow.
occupational therapy, and it's like she's doing all of it, And like so when people say, well, women are this and women are that, and they're weaker, and I'm just like, dude, I have met women who are better examples of strength.
One
Even
second. Dave,
yeah,
keep talking. Sorry. Yeah.
I'll just wait.
Yeah, I'm on the phone. Great, Dave.
That's okay. But no, I was just saying, like the women I've had in my life, have all been like exemplary individuals, and like they all are, they've all like had great careers, Like
Yeah.
you are like an office manager that makes, like 100 G's a
Operations
year.
manager.
Operations manager,
Yeah.
Allie's like heading up a department at a school, and like mom's like, mom makes like 100 G's a year. I mean, she's like the head
Talk
of the
about
department.
that.
Why? Why?
It's just so funny. Um,
Why?
I don't
But
know. Yeah, it's she's mom is so successful. It's incredible.
yeah. And so like, like and you guys have all been stable and you've all it's just like so this fallacy, that women don't belong in, career, they shouldn't be career minded or they shouldn't have any kind of, authority or leadership in their field, like it's so stupid to me and
Hmm.
I really dislike it. Um, and I I've I hear guys complain about women and how they're ruining our culture with all their rights, and I'm like, it's so stupid. I really
It's
dislike it.
so stupid. Let me move around. Yeah, I think the the way that some men are getting so offended by women's protests and just women speaking up, it's entertaining, but it's also such a revelation, like how they feel about women. Like if it really offends you, you're not paying attention or you're benefiting from someone else being marginalized, and you should think about that. You know, it really shouldn't
Yeah.
offend you.
No, it
Like,
shouldn't. It shouldn't.
yeah,
That's the other thing, and like this idea too that if you're a man and you defend women, if you fight for women's rights, you're a cuck.
right,
You're a beta male. The only thing I can think when I hear that is like, do you not have sisters? Do you not have a mom? Like,
right.
do you not see how it's hard for me. I don't understand it because I'm like, do you not have women in your life? Do you not want them to be like equal,
Valued, right.
valued, and like, and have? Do you not see the value in them as even as a family member? Like, how do you how are you able? Like, do you really want your mom and your sisters to be subjugated, like to be less than, to be considered? Like, like what's going on in your head that you think? I don't get it. I really don't. I always that's where my mind goes to. Is like, do you not have a mom at the very minimum? Do you not have a mom?
Yeah.
Is that really how you feel about your own mother? Like she's the problem, Mom, you're like, fuck you, mom. You ruin everything. You're ruining my dreams of being a man, mom. God, living in your mom's basement, complaining about women.
Truly, literally. That's there was I just posted this guy tweeted this thing, Brad, and said like name one thing a woman has built Did you see that? Like he said, name
No.
one thing a woman has built, like from the beginning, including raw materials. And everyone was like, bro, you were created by a woman from raw material, from scratch. Your dumb, you know, goldfish brain actually was developed inside the body of a woman. Um, Yeah, I just find it interesting when anyone takes stuff like that personally. Even like when white people get offended by like Black Lives Matter or um, immigration. Like why is it offensive to you? I understand having like different political opinions, but when you feel threatened or angry or like if your reaction is, "Oh yeah, so you just hate every fucking white person or all men are like, whoa." Like why
Yeah,
is it so personal? Is it because you're
I know.
racist? Is it because you are misogynistic? Like the lady death protest too much is how I feel. Like when you get that pissed off, I feel like, oh, something's getting threatened inside of you that you're benefiting from this. And so it offends you because it's going to take away some of your fun. And why are you having fun at other people's expense?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
No, I know, I know. And like, why do you? I mean, first of all, people complaining about Black Lives Matter. A lot of them probably don't even live in populated areas with lots of black people, but they might not even have black friends. And they have so many opinions. They have so many opinions about black people. And the other thing is like, well, yeah, why do you care? Like, I don't think they're saying blacks are better. They're just saying right now there's a problem and it involves black people, and like we're asking you to pay attention. And like
Yeah.
and they take it so personally, like it's an assault on their own like lives, and it's like I don't think, like where are you getting that from, bro? Like,
That's what I was thinking about, like the border czar who was saying he's coming to Boston and he's bringing hell with him. It was so funny, the response from Boston. They were like, "Come, bitch, we'll take you on." I mean, it was so funny the way Boston rioted
yeah,
against that. I just love it because Boston can be very racist, but it's also very protective of its own. And like the revolution
yeah,
started here. Boston isn't going to let someone come in and tell them what to do. And but I was thinking about it, and the borders are, I don't even know his name, but he's this old white guy, and realizing this is the issue is he's never been marginalized. So he's
yeah,
coming in like, and you can tell. But that's like what I think about when people get that mad. Like, you've clearly never experienced racism. You've never
yeah,
experienced oppression, which is fine. But like hearing that from someone else should not trigger a defensiveness in you. Like it should trigger this understanding, like, okay, white privilege isn't saying, because when you talk about white privilege, people are like, oh yeah, what privilege? I grew up on food stamps, blah, blah, blah. Like it's not saying that you were like given a silver spoon in your mouth. It's saying you have the privilege of being white, so you've never experienced, there's a disparity between your lived experience and a black person, and that's privilege. Like, and I know I have white privilege. Like I've never gone into a store and had anyone think I was stealing. And I used to steal shit. When I get pulled over by a cop, I'm pretty mouthy with them. It never occurs to me that's dangerous or that I could be stereotyped. I'm always like, why'd you pull me over?
that's some white privilege right there. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah,
Like when
yeah,
they come up to you like, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I'm like, "No. What is your issue?" And like I mean, I had a state trooper. He like came up right behind me and I didn't realize it was a state trooper, so I sped up to get in the other lane. And as soon as I sped up, he pulled me over for speeding. I mean, I
hmm
was like getting into a fight with this guy. And after I drove off, I was like, wow, if I was black, I don't think I would have ever done that. It would have scared me. It didn't scare me. I was like, you little punk, you just bullied me. Like you
yeah,
just tailgated me, which forced me to speed. That's entrapment. That's like, and he still gave me a ticket. But I went to the court and I fought it and I didn't have to pay it. But I was like, but that's literally white privilege. I don't think any
yeah,
minority would have felt
yeah.
they would have been
I
terrified
just,
to do that.
yeah, yeah,
And he wouldn't have put up with it. Like, if I was a black woman mouthing off to a state trooper like that, he would have probably would have arrested me. Instead, he was just like,
yeah.
ma'am, take it up with the court. And I was like, I will, go find something else to do. And I was so disrespectful, I guess. But
Yeah.
but that's white privilege, and
Oh,
I'm okay with
yeah,
that. Like I'm okay with acknowledging that. I don't need to be
yeah, yeah,
defensive. That's just the
yeah,
truth.
yeah, yeah.
But
My roommate. He's this dude from Trinidad, and he lived in Boston he grew up in Boston, and
nice.
he was telling me about the culture there, and he was like, yeah, he's like he's like it's a lot grittier. He was like, it's he said there's definitely racism, but he said the thing is like
people band together, like they stick together. He was like, even though there is, like a harsher kind of racism there, he's like, people stick together, man. Like the city comes together, like, like it's just it's a weird like dynamic of racism, but also like, if you're one of us, you're one of us, and
That's
like,
literally people were getting on Boston Talk on TikTok and they were like, listen, we fucking hate the minorities here, but there are minorities. You're gonna care for them.
yeah.
Like, that's the most Boston thing ever. Like, we're so fucking tired of all these immigrants coming here, but you let us handle it. Like, it's so backhanded, but it's like
Ah,
endearing.
it is. It is. That's exactly how he described it. He was like, "Man, you're one of them."
Yeah,
Yeah, even if they hate
yeah.
you.
That's always so funny. People are like, yeah, we do have a problem with some of these people, but you know what? You're not going to come tell us how to handle it. Like, okay, whatever works. Yeah, I love the culture. They are so loyal to everything, every team. It's loyalty. There's like a
Yeah,
Boston loyalty that's really pervasive. Like I've never seen a city so in love with their own sport teams, and
yeah.
it's really fun. I mean, I love it. The camaraderie is great, but they are salty. They're very, very salty.
All right. Well, should we, in honor of International Women's Day, Sophie, you're going to share your story, and yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so I've thought about this for a while because a lot of people know kind of what led to the breakdown of the marriage. They've heard bits and pieces, but I don't know if I've ever just shared the story of my marriage. And I think it's important. So I guess I wanted to start with just the beginning. We started dating. It was really weird. I remember I came home from school. So I was a senior in high school. I was 17, and I came home from school one day and he was in the car with dad talking. And they were discussing whether or not he could date me. No one talked
Hmm.
to me about this. Dad didn't
Hmm.
talk to me. Dad just gave his permission to
Hmm.
him. And
Yeah.
I remember dad and him both telling me like, yeah, this is a good plan. We support it. This is what's going to happen. And I remember feeling kind of like am I being asked or like is this
Oh my
this
God.
is just like I remember being like, why did you talk to my dad before you talked to me? Like how
Yeah.
weird. And you know, that was so that started our relationship, but also at that time we had been back from Beaverton for just a few years, and that the house on 19th Street, those were some of, I mean, I think you would agree, some of the hardest years we had. Um, that is, our family was in the most turmoil it had probably ever been in. Financially, our parents were struggling, and you had just come back from Ashland, and you were not doing great, you know? And that was his first time confronting like mental health issues. And I mean, it was chaos those years. And I do think that that's important because I was very traumatized. And then he came along, so he's 3 years older than me. And that's pretty significant. 17 and
Mhm.
20 is a big difference.
Yeah.
And living on his own. We, grew up in church together
Mhm.
and we were going to the same church. We were in a band together. I mean, I was really flattered. Everyone was like, you got the most eligible bachelor wants you, and there was so much of that of like people saying like you're so lucky that he
Mhm.
wants to date you. And I remember feeling, I mean, even our family, and I remember feeling kind of like put down by that,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
I'm lucky, but then I was kind of like, I mean, sure. I mean, and it was the culture of the Potter's house is so bizarre. I had multiple girls tell me that God had told them they were going to marry him, and I was interfering with God's plan for their life. And, and I was like, why is God telling multiple people? God is a messy bitch. um, um, but I mean, there's so much to it, but I was 17 years old. And even though I do think I've always been a more mature person, I had no concept of what a healthy relationship should ever look like. I had zero context. And you posted about this the other day, after NA. and realizing you don't know what healthy relationships look like, it's really important to acknowledge that because I had zero comprehension. And I had, a very volatile, abusive home life that I was living that I had lived in, and then it was in this escalation point, and I'm dating for the first time. I never dated anyone before that. I had always decided I would never date anyone until I was out of the house because I didn't want to deal with dad.
Hmm.
So then we started dating, and pretty quickly it got physical, and I had never ever done anything with anyone.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's all very normal too. I think part of the issue is the church criminalizes anything that's normal and makes it all perverted and sinful. And I mean, we were just teenagers in a relationship. It's not like we weren't having sex, but it was like, making out and like, the dry humping that teenagers love to do. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but I remember feeling really like the Christian word is convicted, but like guilty. I just felt like I don't like this. It's so much, and it was terrible. And we had a conversation where I mean about 4 months into our relationship where I told him, hey, and I remember thinking about this so hard, like how do I convey this without offending him, and telling him I don't like how physical we are. It makes me really uncomfortable. And I told him I feel like, it's my fault. I've probably like made you feel like it's okay, but it makes me really uncomfortable. And I think I would like it if we just pulled back a little bit because I feel really convicted about it. And this was my first experience with his personality as far as manipulation, is he raged. He was like furious with me and told me, you're making me feel gross because I want you, and that's not fair. And I remember, I mean, I was so young, and I remember my mind like flipping and thinking, he's right. Like I am making I how unkind of
Oh
me to make him feel bad. Um, I remember feeling
God.
so guilty. And from that moment on, I decided I don't know what the right thing is here. And so I would like that's where the disassociation started. I remember I'd be in his apartment, just like staring at the ceiling while he did whatever he wanted and just thinking, I don't even like this, but what do I say? And
Oh.
yeah, and so that was the beginning of our relationship. Uh very aggressive, very like it just didn't pay attention to the reciprocity that was not there. And that, and like a few times I would try and like say, don't you think we should like maybe calm down with this stuff? We're trying to wait until we're married. And just the guilt that he would inflict on me for making him feel bad. And it worked every time. I always felt so horrible. And then, you know, it's interesting because even to this day, that has been his argument, is I tricked him. I made him think that I was like very sexual and flirty, and I was very sexual and flirty, and it was all a trick because then I like dried up as soon as we got married. And I just seduced him and made him believe something about me, and he thought I was going to be like this little super freak. And um like he would say things like that to yeah, all the time. And I felt so much guilt about it. Like I remember feeling, even during the divorce, like I guess I mean I was really like flirty and like seductive and sexy and sexual, and maybe it was all my fault. And then now that I've had some time from it, realizing first of all, no, I was participating how every girl does. Like I being sexual? Yeah, that's what you do when you're dating someone, especially when you're a teenager. I mean, actually no, just all the time. You're like, you're expressing this sexuality, but then when someone violates you sexually, like, and that's what I like realized is no, I was very into my marriage and my husband until the first time he raped me, which was 2 weeks after our first daughter was born, which was 1 year after we got married. So like that's where everything turned. And I mean that was the first time that he assaulted me with violence. And then yeah, of course my sexual like appetite and like engagement with him changed profoundly.
Yeah.
Like what
Yeah.
would you expect? But I carried this guilt the whole time, feeling like I did really switch up on him. And
Oh.
I, up until our divorce, I felt so responsible constantly for his behavior. Like I caused all of this. And looking back on it now, especially having teenage girls and realizing that's really unfair that I would get in trouble often. Like, you're being too, if you guys are being physical, it's because you're seducing him. And I remember feeling so confused 'cause I was like, but I'm not. Like, sometimes I reciprocate, but I tried to tell him to stop and he got furious with me. And so now I just lay there and stare at the ceiling. Like I'm not doing anything. And
Oh man.
but just realizing there is a problem in the Christian culture that contributes to this. One of them was this idea that any sexual sin that occurs is always the woman's fault because we there's like this very strange dissonance in the church where a woman has no value, is less valuable than a man, doesn't shouldn't, operate in any authority, but somehow has all of the authority to completely own the sexual experience of every man and he has no control. It's all her fault. Like, do we have authority or not? Like, that's a convenient doctrine that completely cancels out the other one. Like, on one hand, we have no power. On the other hand, it's all our power. And so he's not responsible ever. And that still happens, like there was this I mean, I would get in trouble for it, and he would say it too, like, I can't help it. You're just so sexual, and I wasn't. I was just a girl living in a female body, engaging with a man, and not trying to be. I know there are some women who really enjoy the power play of being very seductive, but also
Hmm.
to hold a woman accountable for how a man reacts to her, I like 100% reject that because men are not animals. They are just as
Yeah.
human as I am. And so they are just as
Yeah.
capable of self-restraint and thoughtfulness as I am. And in that situation you have a man who's living on his own, working a job, he's not in school, and a high school senior. The power dynamic is already contributing to it being more in his favor. Why was it my responsibility to correct his sexual appetite? Like it
It
was such a
wasn't.
strange thing.
Yeah.
Right, it
Yeah.
wasn't. And
It
so
wasn't.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
but to be accused of that and to realize, so that was how our relationship started. And I was 18 when we got married, so I graduated high school. I turned 18 in June, graduated a week later, and then 8 months later we were married. And in all of that, our home life was really crazy. And I remember just thinking, I just want to get away from this. And I mean, I tried to end the engagement multiple times, and it's really intense to look back on it and realize there was so much happening that nothing exists in a vacuum. I I knew that I didn't want to get married. I mean, I remember on our wedding day, there was this moment where I was in the room getting ready at the church, and he knocked on the door and just said, "We're getting married today." And I remember feeling like I don't want to do it. I want to cancel it. And feeling like I can't. Everyone's here. Like, my best friend Elle had a similar experience, and there's just this panic that you feel when you know this isn't right, but there's so much that's gone on. People are here from out of town. People have, what can I do? And so you just do it.
And you were
And
so young, Sophie. You were so young. That's the other.
so young.
It's this. I think what is frustrating to me and disturbing to see is that you were very young. You had just graduated high school, and there was an entire culture around you that validated that experience and essentially was complicit in the manipulation.
Yeah. Yeah, it
They.
made it impossible to it never even occurred to me to speak up about it or ask for help because I would have been in trouble. I would have gotten blamed for all of it. And so Um, and it's not like I was aware, like I should talk about this, but I'm gonna get in trouble because this place is weird. I felt like I want to talk about it, but I think there's something I'm doing wrong. Like I felt the entirety of the responsibility was mine all the time, which is that is the issue with the church doctrine. I remember our parents telling me like we couldn't have told you no anyways. And I remember feeling like, yeah, they're probably right. But then I was like, but you never tried. How do you know that? You never tried. I feel like that's a cop out. So many of these doctrines and like comebacks are to relieve the other person of feeling responsible for how they were complicit in this happening.
You know, yeah. Oh, I was gonna say, we're both stubborn people. I think all us kids are pretty stubborn.
Yeah.
You know, But I've thought a lot too, just about how like mom and dad have said things, like you just do what you want to do, and I
Yeah,
do, I do
right.
just do. But I wonder how much of that of us acting like that has been a direct result of like the way we were raised, man. Like like we weren't given like healthy approvals. We weren't given healthy, like, we weren't taught to to learn how to ask and then be reciprocated with, favor. And like, like we were kids, right? And like when you asked for something, you remember growing up, and like we learned that you didn't ask for things, you just did them because there was always going to be some crazy consequence, irregardless.
Right.
Even the act of asking our parents for something could be turned into like some weird fight. And so right? Us kids just learn to just like, we just, do it either way because you're not gonna,
Yeah, we never
uh,
were, I feel like we never had a chance to like talk through something and not be in trouble for it. Like I was always kind
yeah,
of like, I'm probably gonna, our parents, I don't know if this was culture or the church or both, but there was like this thing where you were automatically guilty
uh-huh, uh-huh,
or like
uh-huh.
wrong. Like even dumb
You're
stuff, like
always, I,
yeah, like even if you were just like, oh yeah, someone at the school like was mean to me, it wouldn't be like, oh, it was like, well, what were you doing? So there was always this like presupposition that the onus of responsibility was already mine. And
uh-huh. And it taught us that we just had to do things ourselves without
yeah,
without approval, and so
yes.
not to, but it's just, mom and dad have brought that up with me in the past. Like, David, you don't ask for help. And I'm like, I'm looking at him like, you taught me that. Do you realize
Yeah, I
that?
learned not to.
That's a learned behavior.
Right. And you know what? It's been so healing for me that my children ask me for help and we talk about things. And I've learned, I mean, we talk about things that we don't agree on. And the way we are able to communicate has healed so much for me to realize when you give your children the space to have their own opinion and when you defend them and you are for them first. Like, I don't care if my kid's wrong. If someone is cruel to them, I'm on their team. Not that like I'm going to go beat up that kid, but my job sometimes is to just be there for my child. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you can come to me and you can be sure that I have your back no matter what. That did not
yeah.
exist in our home.
No,
Um,
it didn't. It felt like we were on our own all the time, and we had, again, it just reinforced the idea that we just had to, it was on us. It was always just, us. Like,
but I also,
whatever decision you made, it was always going to be the wrong one. So
right.
why even ask if it's wrong or right? Like it's
Yeah, sometimes I'm really grateful for it because I have learned to trust my voice the most. I trust myself more
yeah,
than anything.
yeah, that's true.
But it's also, I
Blessings.
mean, yeah, praise God. Um, the
Fiercely
Lord does work
independent.
in mysterious ways, doesn't he? Uh, but also, like, but I also sort of reject that idea because
Yeah,
when I think about it, I'm like, but I don't know if that's true because I never experienced any of my parents ever coming to me thoughtfully and being like, I love you so much. I feel like this man might be harming you, or we feel like this is an abusive relationship. I think I would have listened to that, but that's not how
yeah.
they would have come to me. They would have
That's
come to
not.
me and been like, you're too young. We feel like you're just being impulsive. And then I would have been
Yeah,
defensive. And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
like, I was constantly defensive, but it's because everything I did was under
yeah.
attack.
I
Um,
yes, yes. Yeah,
so
that's
I don't
exactly.
know.
Oh man.
Yeah, like if I think if someone would have come to me with compassion for me and said, we feel like we're losing our kid because you see, I mean, because I remember mom, I don't know if you remember this because you weren't around, like my kidneys failed. And that is like another thing, just realizing my body from the very beginning knew. Like when that all started, when he started getting really aggressive and like pushing for things that I didn't want to do, uh, I got really sick and it was intense. I had to go on short-term disability, like while I'm preparing for my wedding. Like
Yeah,
why didn't anyone say, "Hey, what is going on?" I mean, I remember mom being like, wondering if I was stressed and not doing well, but I feel like there was just this culture of something's going on, but let's just, we just need to get through this. And I don't know. So, we got married and it was just so volatile the entire time. I mean, our honeymoon, we fought. And it just there was this underlying sexual aggression that started immediately. Just this idea, and I don't know, I don't have enough context. I didn't like date any of the other guys in church. I've
Hmm.
never been married to any of them. So I don't know if it's like what happens when you have heavily repressed boys with a lot of privilege, or if he was specifically aggressive. But
I
just
think
this idea,
John is. Sorry.
yeah.
I think your ex is a little more. I think he's a little bit more aggressive than most.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think he's a little bit more entitled and manipulative. And so that played into it a lot. But, I also do sometimes feel this grief for both of us that the church culture really ruined any chance we could have had to work through it in a healthy way or to even have a healthy relationship because we walked into that relationship with him feeling like I have a wife. And so now I can have sex whenever I want. And that's why she's here. And I walked into it feeling like I'm married, so whatever my husband wants is what I have to do no matter what. It didn't even occur to me to, and part of that is the church, and part of that was just our home. Like I had definitely formed this mindset that you don't talk about anything that's going on and that, home lives are often just really volatile and that's it didn't feel it didn't feel not normal to me. Even when he would do stuff that was really awful, it never occurred to me that this is not right. I just thought this is marriage. And that first year, it's all kind of a blur, but we got married in April and I got pregnant 3 months later and I was on birth control. It was not the plan. I was supposed to go to George Fox. I was working at Wells Fargo and I got pregnant. And I was really sick. And so I mean, that's like immediately 3 months into our marriage. I am horribly sick, so not as available. And the tension around sex started immediately because it became this thing of like, so many manipulative things happened. One of them being he convinced me that there's a family in the church that everyone knows because they have 12 kids because they're just fucking weird. But
Yeah.
at the time they had like six, maybe five, but and they're, very sweet, like very like wholesome, and he convinced me that he heard them talking and that the reason they had such a great marriage is because she would have sex with her husband every single day. And I remember hearing that and thinking, oh, wow, that's a lot. But I want
Sophie,
that kind of marriage. um so
he
I
never, he never. I'm sorry. I just have to say this. Like the insanity of this situation is that he never just like he never even took it upon himself to just make you feel comfortable, to make you feel loved, and like it's so demanding. From the very beginning, it was a demand. It wasn't like a participatory. Like
right,
we're
my own
each.
pleasure was never considered. It was never, I mean, the entire marriage. I think that's the problem. Is there was never this idea that if you're not enjoying it, it shouldn't happen. It was like I would love it if you did, and I'm pissed off that you don't, but I don't need you to. And
I'm pissed off that you don't.
I mean so much of that was like, you think
That's
this is
such a
fun? You think I
you.
like
That's
this?
oh my God. I
And
think he does like that. I think that's the fucked up part.
well, what I
I
think
think.
is really like
Do you
heartbreaking
think
for
he?
me.
Do you think he does like that dynamic of just when you don't like it? Some men
No,
really do like that. No?
I don't. No, but I
Yeah.
do think that he felt like disgust towards me, like you don't like it and that's your problem. Like it was never your lack of attraction to me might be something I've done to you. It was like you need to I mean, he would say it like, "Yeah, do you think I like having sex with someone who doesn't want to have sex with me?" Like I don't know what to tell you. And what's really intense is that I would often, I mean, right until the end, because he said some of that when we were getting divorced. I was like, why did you do that to me? Why did you insist on sex when I didn't want it? And he like looked at me and was like, do you think I liked that? It was just as bad for me. And what's really intense is I remember the guilt I felt, like profound guilt. Like, you're right, that would be awful. And now I feel like absolutely not. Absolutely
No,
not. What's gross
no,
is that you were aware of that and you did it anyways. Um,
yeah,
you didn't need me to be you didn't need me to want it. And that is,
yeah,
and I understand men, like if you have a higher sex drive, or I understand being frustrated maybe
yeah.
that
But
your wife,
Sophie, you
but
don't have
to
to explain it. He never once even
no, but
tried
because
to
people
like,
always like come back when they hear it, they're like, yeah, but
oh
if
well,
a wife's not having
fuck,
sex with you.
dude,
But
fuck
also
them.
what I think people should
Jesus.
realize is in all of this, I never stopped having, like, part of the problem is he had this rule. And so a lot of where our marriage started to really, really fall. I mean, it was brutal the whole time because that was from the beginning. And so, he told me that in that first year of marriage, about this couple and their perfect marriage was because they had sex every day and she was so submissive. And, my best friend at the, Elle at the time, she was married to her first husband, who was also a part of a church and also a very abusive guy. He had multiple affairs. But what really kills me is her and I would get together and we were both suffering so profoundly in our marriages and not talking about it with each other because you don't do that. And we would we would try and like say, okay, we're going to try and be better wives. So let's come up with meal plans. We're going to do all these things for the house. And then let's commit to having sex with our husbands every day for 30 days to try and fix our own hearts towards our husbands. Like it sounds so silly, but like when we talk about it now, sometimes I feel like I just want to cry. Like my little 19-year-old heart wanted so badly to be a good wife. And I felt so much guilt that my husband was upset with me because I wasn't having sex with him every day, that I committed to having sex with him every day to try and, you know, make my own heart like fall in love with him again. And
One second. So,
okay,
is your Wi-Fi connection? Hello?
I'm good.
For some, okay. I'm so sorry. It's your screen went black.
No, no, mine. I mean, you look fuzzy, but it always looks fuzzy, and then it's clear when you post
Oh,
it.
for some reason, it's like the audio is really garbled and like
For me,
on your end. Yeah.
my battery's a little low. Let me go grab a charger. Hold on.
Okay.
Get out, Olive. Ugh. As soon as I open the door, she tried to come in.
Is it plugged in?
It's about to be. I just went and got my charger. Hold on. Ooh, come on. Okay, it's plugged in now.
Okay. That yeah, it seems better. All right. Sorry. Okay. What were you saying?
So, Elle and I, we would try and make these commitments to ourselves to be better wives. And so that was a large part of it as a church. This is a problem where you have an organization that only allows men to articulate the human experience to everyone. Is I had no representation in the church. It was all male pastors preaching on marriage. And, you know, having men speak to the woman's experience is just fucking stupid. And, and, and one-sided. And like, it's the most like absolute bullshit thing that the church has perpetrated is that men are the orators of the entire human experience. And like to have, so you have male pastors doing marriage seminars, there's no input from women, and so they would get up there and talk about how, and they only know the man's experience, and so of course they can empathize with what it's like to be a man who's being nagged or being, not appreciated or not getting enough sex. That's all that they would speak to in these marriage seminars and marriage sermons is, some of them, like Kevin Foley, you want to talk about a fucking piece of shit who knows how to manipulate himself. He was like the marriage guru because he was softer spoken and appeared to be so compassionate towards women. And so if he spoke on something, we would all kind of listen because he would talk that man said some of the most abusive shit. He just said it in a really passive way, and so it felt acceptable. But he would, I remember one marriage seminar, him getting up there and saying, sis, you've got all this time to put your kids to bed, to get him a drink of water, read little Johnny a book, to pat him on the back until he falls asleep. You can't give your husband 15 minutes before bed. Sometimes duty calls. That was his exact words. Sometimes duty calls. And I remember being in the car with him and my husband at the time and the guest speaker, and he was telling the guest speaker, yeah, someone came up to me after that and they were so offended that I said that and said, it is not your wife's duty. And they were just roasting this guy and laughing at him. And I remember feeling this like worry. Like, why is it awful that that man said that? I want to know who it was. I'm so relieved someone said something. And hearing them, it was Adam Porter and Kevin Foley just like mocking this guy. Like, what an idiot. Like, what a weirdo. And so that's the culture that we were growing up in. And so that all started happening in my first year of marriage while I was not even out of high school for a year. So we got married in April, and then the next April, the week of our 1 year anniversary, we were announced as the outreach directors, which, if you don't know the church, that's like you take over the whole concert ministry, outreach ministry, and you are the runners up to be the next pastors. It's going to be launched out and to start a new church. So the week of our 1 year anniversary, so I've only been married 1 year. I was 8 months pregnant, and we
Hmm.
just became the door directors, which, when you do that, you're taking on, your husband is working full time, but now he's taking on this massive responsibility, and you don't get paid. You get paid like $200 a month for it. And so I was immediately abandoned to the ministry with a newborn. And I do feel like that's where a lot of this started, is the stress on him, because he was an apprentice as an electrician full time, and now I'm not working, and we have a new baby, and he's just been put into this position of incredible responsibility, but you're not getting paid, but you're expected to be at every single thing. You have to plan all these events, you have to preach, you have to give altar calls. I mean, he was never around. And so I had our daughter, and after you have a baby, you are not supposed to have sex for 6 weeks because your body needs to
Hmm.
heal.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks after I had her, he came to me and was just like, I can't do this. Like, he was so angry. And I remember saying, I don't know if I'm, like, I was terrified. I was like, I don't know if I can. And he was like, well, I'll just be really quick. And the violence of that moment has never left to me, because first of all, it was incredibly painful. And the whole time I was saying that I was in pain. And the response was then, and every time after, I'll be quick. And was injured. And I remember going to the doctor because, you have to go back for a checkup, and her being like, why did you have sex? Like, because I tore. I just remember the humiliation and shame, and telling her, like, well, we both wanted to. And I just remember her looking at me and now
Oh.
realizing she knew I didn't want to. No one wants to that soon. Your body is recovering. Like, and she knew. I just remember she like looked at me for a little bit and just kind of nodded. And I remember I was like red, and I felt so much shame. Um,
I'm
and
so
so that was, 2 weeks after she was born, and it just never stopped. I mean, and I wanted to talk about this because I feel like a lot of women, it's like these, I mean, they aren't micro, but I guess you would call them like these micro aggressions in sex that you're not sure if it's wrong. But, like with all of our children, he would have to have sex so badly that their crying would piss him off because it would ruin it for, when they're little, they cry often. And so he would have me lay down, and I would be nursing a baby while he's having sex with me to keep them quiet so they don't bother him. And you know what? That happened with all four of our kids constantly, which, if your partner is feeding a baby while you're fucking her body, she's not enjoying it, and you're a fucking weirdo. And I was not sure if I was the only person to have experienced that, and I'm not. I've had other people be like, oh, yeah, my husband did that to me too. Like, what is that? What is that compulsion that if a woman says, okay, well, I can, sorry, the baby is crying. I can breastfeed them so they'll be quiet. Like, do what you need to. Why is your response, okay, cool, thank you. I'm going to just masturbate with your body. And I'm being really graphic because that's what it is. And it's important to not like make it tidy or gentle, because it isn't tidy or gentle. It's so prolifically violating to be a woman whose body has done this incredible thing. And now your body is feeding this baby, and this man can't control himself enough to just let you be a mother. He has to fuck your body while you're feeding his child because he can't control himself. That's disgusting. And it happened to me with every single child the entire time I was breastfeeding, and I breastfed all of them for 2 years. And that like should speak to what I was experiencing as far as sexual intercourse with my husband was not this consensual, seductive, intimate thing. It was a duty, and it was part of what really happened. That the catalyst for this divorce is in like 2018, I think we had this idea to start sharing the story of our marriage because we were aware of like the hardships we had gone through and some of the crazy things that we had experienced, and that women never had representation in the church. And so we thought, okay, what if we come up with like kind of a TED talk where we both speak to our experiences? And it
If we
was really, yeah, go ahead.
before, do you mind if we stop the recording and then restart it? There's like some feedback on your end. I think maybe the mic. I just want to see if it. I just want to see if it goes away.
Okay.
Okay, so
So
you were gonna do a TED talk.
so we had this idea to tell our story with both of us speaking, which is so incredible and so important. But it was really an intense thing. So we started going around and we would talk and tell our story. And I have to say, I every single time I did, I had many women come to me weeping and thanking me because they had never heard their own experience articulated in church, which is why it's important to have women speak to women. And to men. Men need to hear how a woman express how their experience, is lived from a woman. They don't need to hear that from a man. That's crazy. Um, but so it was really valuable in that sense that women were like, thank you. I've never heard, I'm how can a man speak to what it is to have a miscarriage? How can a man speak to what it's like to have someone, you know, wanting to have sex with your body without like they can't speak to that. They haven't
Yeah.
experienced it. So these women were just like so grateful because, I had a really late term miscarriage, and the incredible isolation of that. Anyways, in that talk, he would talk about how much regret he had for how he handled our marriage sexually. But in it, he would admit that he would do this thing where he would harm our children. He would excessively spank them and discipline them. He would yell at them. He'd be really cruel if I didn't have sex with him every other day.
Jesus Christ.
He would admit this in front of all these people. He would also admit that he would be really cruel to people in church. And I remember in Chico, this would get so bad where he would belittle people and humiliate them. And then I would be like, why did you do that? And he'd be like, we haven't had sex in 4 days. And it never occurred to me. And this is my issue with the church and how we were raised. It never even occurred to me that that was manipulation and that that was bullshit. I always felt like, oh my God, I'm responsible. He was just mean to my babies because I failed as a wife. And so I'm going to be a better wife. And so if you're listening to this and you think, well, men do need to have sex, I committed to having sex with this man every other day for 17 fucking years. I looked forward to my period like it was Christmas because I would get a week off. I'd get a week off of letting my body be used. He would still require an orgasm. And so that was pervasive in my entire marriage, was this like keep him sexually satisfied so that he doesn't harm children and he doesn't harm I or himself. And so there was just this incredible thing that happened to my mind where I felt so much fear that I was causing people harm if I did not perform well as a wife. And all that meant was making myself available. My body no longer belonged to me. It like And that's what the church would preach, is your body is not your own. They never remember that that goes both ways. It's always just you need to give your body to your husband. I mean, literally in the Bible, it's saying that's both people. Like, sir, you also don't have the right to your own body and to exercise your own needs over hers. That's never talked about. Um, I was told your body is not your own, and it is your job to not deny your husband. And some people will have the ability to hear that with nuance and have a healthy boundary around it. I was not one of those people because I was someone who was not raised correctly to view relationships and boundaries correctly. I am someone whose personality is like, if this is what you're telling me, I'm going to suppose it's true. Like, it didn't even occur to me to question. Now I question everything. But like, my own personal agency was never something I gave consideration to. Um, and so, I mean, that's part of what like kills me about my story is I don't it's not like I struggled with, is this right? I just thought, wow, I I can't seem to be a good wife, and I'm going to just keep trying. And like when I purged all my books, so I just finally went through all my books last week, and these are books that I've had since I was 18 because I haven't really wanted to. And I found all of these books on how to be a better wife, how to be a good homemaker. I found journals of notes where I would say, like, here's what I can do to be a better wife. I don't know that my husband had any of that. Maybe once in a while, but it was always this thought that if the marriage is struggling, it's because of her. And that you can heal your marriage if you will just make yourself available. And even as I was leaving, having women reach out who were being like violently abused by their husbands in these churches. One of them, her husband was he like strangled her to the point where she was blacking out, and Greg Mitchell forbid her from divorcing her husband, saying God will honor you if you will just keep praying for this man and being obedient to your marriage. That's the advice that this church gives women who are being abused. Like our good friend's sister was in Texas. She was being incredibly abused. She would go to her pastor and he would say, well, what are you doing to make him so mad? And then also told you, the answer is not divorce. You need to pray for your husband, submit, be gentle and good, and that will bring him around, and God will honor your sacrifice. Like that is the culture I lived in. And so I was being harmed profoundly. And it never occurred to me that I should stand up for myself or get myself out of there. I always thought maybe there's more I can do. Maybe I can just be a better person. Maybe I can work on myself to like figure out why I hate this man. And that is what happened. Pretty quickly after, I would say after that first incident, I just realized I hate him. I hate him. And then I would struggle so badly with that, and I would try and like repent of my hatred and like do these things to make myself fall in love with him again while experiencing this thing where my body was being used as a like against my will. And
I'm sorry, Sophie. You know, it makes me sad
yeah.
because all those years, just we would see each other,
Hmm.
and the family would be there, and we'd all be happy, and it appeared happy, and John would just be there,
It's intense though, Dave, because in
and
so many ways we weren't happy. I mean, and
no, no, that's what I'm saying. That's what makes me
no, but I
sad.
think that you might not
Is
have been around for it because I mean, like
Yeah,
our family, like our parents, they were in Chico like 20 plus times in the 4 years we were there because they were so worried about me,
yeah, yeah.
you
No, I
know?
knew things were going on. What you're describing right now, I didn't know this level of, I knew you were struggling. I
Yeah.
sensed that. I didn't realize it was this level of abuse.
And I
I'm
don't think I
sorry.
did either. I think
Yeah.
I was convinced, just like everyone else, that I was experiencing postpartum depression or, my own instability. It never occurred to me that I'm reacting to something that's being done to me. Um,
You know what sticks out to me, man, is I remember this, I think it was when you came back from Chico, and I remember you telling me, I thought about this a lot. I remember you telling me like I just can't wait to be an old woman. And and I remember thinking about it then. I was like, why does she not like her youth? And I something about that, the way you said it, there was just this deep sadness. And I remember thinking, there's something, like I could tell like you were really hurting and that, I'm sorry. It's like you lost your youth to this fucking dude.
well, that's so intense. I remember, I mean, I've still felt that. Yeah, I couldn't wait to be old. Ooh, that makes me want to cry. Yeah, I did always feel like that. I think I did just feel like, wow, this is awful. I just want to get to the part where it's behind me. And yeah, I I did feel that a lot. I just wanted to be old. I mean, that's in some ways that's like suicidal ideation, you know. I couldn't wish to be dead, but I could wish to be not in this life. And yeah, so that was going on. And I do think it's really interesting that I also thought that, like, I mean, I think one thing that's really interesting is the way a lot of this behavior was defended at the end and that, and during, like, I was so depressed and so depressed. And so I would exert my agency in the ways I could, not totally consciously, but like one of them was I would just spend money so recklessly. And I remember there were times where I'd feel like I hate this man so much, I don't give a shit. I'm going to just buy whatever I want. And it's not like I was buying, like I would go to the thrift store and buy clothes for the kids, or I'd buy like extra formula. But I would overdraft the account all the time. I was like reckless with money. And part of that is, maybe personality and how we were raised, but also I do think that, after talking to therapists, like in a lot of ways that was my only way that I could assert any authority in my life.
Yeah, any kind of control.
Yeah, because I wasn't even on the checking account. I was given an allowance, but I had access to the account numbers, and just kind of this feeling of like, fuck you, I'm gonna do whatever I want. And I
Oh
knew it was
man,
harmful and
I remember John.
saying that.
I remember our parents. I remember your ex saying, you know, Sophie's just so bad with money. She's, you know, you have no idea what she's done with our money. And like now that I, oh my God, now that I think about it, it's such like Jesus. I hate that they twisted it like that. Yeah,
Yeah, and
that was it. That was your only outlet, man. I get it. Like you had to have some form of control that allowed you to have a control. That
like
was your one.
what a weird thing to like try and find a defense for what he did. Like
I know.
why can't you hear that someone's been raping his wife and say there's nothing you can say to defend this? Why is the reaction,
Yeah,
well, what was she doing to make you act like
I
that?
know.
And like that was one of the things his dad said at the end to me before he even knew that I'd had an affair or anything. He was like, well, you were really mean to him and you were terrible with money. Like, I was
Fuck
mean
it.
to him? Why the fuck do you think I was mean to him? Also, I would take that so seriously when they tell me that, like, he at the end said, you were mean to me every single day. And I was like, oh, was I? Like, no fucking way, because you didn't want this divorce.
No shit. I mean,
But also,
I
yeah, I was
hate.
mean to you. Every other day you were using my body. I had to like
Yeah, yeah.
mentally prepare every other day. I would like have to work myself up like, okay, this is gonna happen. It's gonna be fine. It'll be over real quick. That's merciful. It was over in
Sophie,
90 fucking seconds. But like,
you were being raped for 17 years, man.
and like, yeah, so was I
That's
mean every day? And that
of
was one
course.
thing that helped
Jesus,
me when I
of
worked at Mass
course.
General. I
Uh-huh.
remember telling my coworker this, Tamika, like, yeah, he did say I was mean to him every day. And she was like, of course you were. Why
Yeah,
wouldn't you have been?
yeah, yeah,
And that was the first time that I felt like, oh, yeah, yeah. Who cares if I was mean to you every day? You were assaulting me every other day.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I was
yeah,
a prisoner. Why was, like, what a weird, but also, like, what a weird justification. Like, okay, what he was doing wasn't great, but you spent all the money and you were mean? Like, where the fuck are your scales of justice? Like, what a
yeah, yeah.
weird fucking defense for that. And then, you know, um, while we were going through the divorce, I got a call from someone whose husband is on the council asking about how I spent money because this motherfucker, Kevin Foley, was going around and telling people, well, Sophie was really bad with money. Like, he went on like a smear campaign telling him and his wife went
Yeah,
around the church saying
yeah.
that, telling all these people that I was bad with money, telling all these people that I was mentally unstable. Like,
That's the shit,
you're
dude. That's the shit that our own sisters repeated to me. Well, you know, it went both ways. You know, Sophie was, you have no idea what she did with their checking account. And now that I think about that, just like, what is going on? Where is your fucking sense of morality?
also, what did I do to the checking account? Like, now that I think about it, because I used to believe that, like, man, I was so bad. No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. I literally, this is part of, I think, the issue with narcissism and gaslighting is that man never bought anything for our children and never paid any of the bills and never bought anything for the home. All of the money that had to be spent, I had to spend it. And so I was responsible for everything. And so when there wasn't enough money, my fault. But I'm like paying the bills. I didn't buy all this luxury stuff. I didn't like I now that I'm past, I'm like, no, that was wrong. I wasn't terrible with money. We didn't have a lot of money. We were constantly like intentionally being poor and
And
we had
Sophie,
four fucking children.
and Sophie, even if at times you splurged, It's-
Well, I mean, I
To,
was really
to,
reckless with it for
no,
sure.
I know. It's okay. It's okay. Jesus Christ. For them to use that as an excuse, like that it somehow excuses his behavior is so fucking insane.
Insane.
And
That's what I like.
yeah,
And that's everyone has said that. And that's what I think is crazy is everyone from the church who's talked to me has heard that. I'm like, why are you letting people even try and defend what he did to me? Like, was I did I overspend? Sure, I guess. It's not like we had very much money anyways.
you don't have to,
But
you don't
also
even,
like
it's such a stupid,
it's so yeah, like why did I feel so much shame about that? And why did I like feel like, okay,
it's
I guess
because
I don't get to be.
they were manipulators, they are narcissists, they are gaslighters, and they will
But
find
I do
any,
think it's
any,
really important for like people listening to realize when you hear that someone you know has been abused, your instinct will want to relieve you of the grief of that and the responsibility you might have. You will be relieved to find ways to not believe her or to make it less painful. Resist that urge. I've participated in it, I know, but now having experienced it and realizing that's what it is, it's other people hearing, oh my God, like this was happening and we supported this man and his father, because a lot of people were freaked out. Like, well, maybe she didn't tell anyone. And then they realize, oh, I went to Kevin Foley like 5 or 6 times about this and so then they're like, oh, so someone did know. Okay, so nothing was happening. Instead of thinking, hey, we want to hold these men accountable, it is so much more convenient and relieving to say, okay, well, we heard that you weren't like always great with money and that you could be really mean and reckless sometimes. And so, it wasn't great, but like now we don't know what to do because both of you were acting badly. Like you've just let yourself off the hook of responsibility in a really abuse. You have just perpetuated abuse. And this is why people get away with abuse is because of that reaction where people don't they want to be relieved of the guilt they might feel or their own responsibility for it. They're eager to wash their hands of it. And I've realized that that has played a part in a lot of people's response, but unfortunately, having it happen in your own family is like a particular form of abandonment that I cannot comprehend, you know?
yeah, I do know. I'm so sorry, Sophie. Good
I know
God.
I'm like so intense about it, but it's just,
No, Sophie, no, fuck, don't apologize for your
I mean, it's
intensity.
that or
Fuck that.
cry. So I'm just going to be
Oh,
angry.
no. No, you have every right to be, man. It's not okay what has happened to you. It is not okay what has happened to you by your husband. It is not okay what has happened to you by the church. It is not okay what has happened to you by our own family members. It hurts. It hurts to recognize just how not okay it is. And you're allowed to
And I
hurt.
think, yeah. Yeah, and I think part of why I wanted to tell this is just to kind of like really expose what was happening. It wasn't just this like, I don't know, it sounds like he was just a little bit horny and no,
Yeah.
no. And so that was happening and then at the end, he had recorded us having sex and me giving him a hand job, me in bed sleeping. He had made this whole album and none of it with my consent or my awareness. And then the pictures of me sleeping, like those pictures, David, there will be times where I'm like randomly in my life, just like it's happened to me at work. I was just walking across the office and all of a sudden I saw my own body in those pictures. And it's like this feeling of I wish I could just peel my skin off and burn it. Like no one understands what it's like. I was asleep, uh, completely oblivious, not trying to look sexual. And there's pictures of me and they look like crime scene photos because he used a flash because it's the middle of the night, like his hand moving my shirt. And this is embarrassing to say, but it's important because this is part of the humiliation is what I had to work through is in those pictures, like I've had 4 children. My body has changed. And seeing my body laying on the bed that way, my tummy and like stretch marks and like the horror I felt at seeing my body that way and then realizing someone is like masturbating to it and like without my consent, and his hand is in the picture, and my body looks so unattractive. And just when I saw when I saw those pictures and I found them through a really incredible set of circumstances, I remember driving to a parking lot, and the feeling I had was like I would do anything to not exist in my skin anymore. Um, the way I despised my own body. And I immediately called his dad and told him. And his response was, "Wow, that's really awful." And then he came back a few days later and said, "I'm just not sure what the sin is because you're his wife and it's not pornography." How is it not pornography? And later, the pastor of the church who took over, John Gash, this gross fucker, he would tell people, it's not cool that he did that, but she was messing around with someone else, and so he was doing it so that he could masturbate. At least it was his wife, and it was her fault because he was insecure in the relationship because she was having this emotional affair, and so again, not his responsibility. He did something bad because I made him do it.
Yeah.
And hearing other people, another man told me this, that the pastor told him that, like, you guys are sitting around talking about these pictures and this video, you're talking about like
That is
the
that is that is
acceptability,
that is enraging, man.
and just like you're talking about a woman, you're talking about my body, you're talking about the way it was objectified and abused by a man. Like, don't talk about me, and don't talk about me if I'm not there. And why the fuck do you have an opinion? And why
Yeah.
is it in favor of the abuser? Like, and the humiliation of the whole thing was so severe that I mean, you know, for that first little bit, I relapsed heavily into self-harm again, and just because of that feeling of like despising my own skin, because my body has now just been so taken from me. And I think I would speak to that, like, if a woman is being harmed, if anyone's being harmed, don't ever try to find the reason that makes it easier for you to digest. You must not do that. All it does is embolden the abuse and tells the person who's been harmed that they never should have spoken up. It's why people don't speak up. And it's wrong. You are relieving yourself because you don't, it feels uncomfortable, and I get it, but it's wrong because now someone has been hurt so badly, and where you could have healed them, you've just made it worse by saying you might have caused your own abuse. You might have contributed, and this person couldn't help themselves. Like, no, that's wrong. There is no justification. There is no balancing. Those scales can't ever be balanced. I could have been the biggest bitch in the world. I could have done anything, and it wouldn't have justified assaulting me that way. There
Yeah.
is no justification. And that is like what I really, from my story, like, if you hear a woman talking about being abused by her husband or her boyfriend or anyone, and your instinct is to say, well, what are you doing? Stop it. I don't, and that's what I would tell people when they would say, like, well, he said that's not what happened. What do I gain from saying this? I didn't gain anything. I humiliated myself. I have nothing to gain. He has everything to gain by lying. What do I get from this? I didn't take alimony. He was supposed to give me half of his retirement. I don't want it. He pays child support. Like, I there's nothing for me to gain by saying this stuff. I have humiliated myself. It's degrading. It's awful. It like makes me want to burn the skin off my body. Women do not benefit by telling their story. And when people say, yeah, well, women lie and blah, you're talking about a massive exception to the rule, and you are making yourself feel better for not caring
Yeah.
about abuse.
Yeah. You're focusing on like maybe 1, 2% that might actually do that versus the 98% of women who are
The
completely okay.
majority.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's
I,
just
I've
it's
I've
you
had a
trying to relieve yourself.
I've had a lot of guys. They always bring up the exception. Well, what if a woman lies? I'm like, dude, do you know how rare that is? like most, I'm sorry, but you're using like the smallest percentage possible to justify why your own like unwillingness to believe that rape is extremely common and in relationships. It happens probably more often in relationships than it does outside of it. And
It's a woman's biggest threat to her life is her husband.
yeah, I'm so sorry, Sophie. Thank you for sharing. Okay, is
Yeah.
there more you want to talk about? Because I have to go to a meeting right now.
No, no, I think that, I mean, I have to leave as well. I think I would just want to end it like that. Just, I hope you hear this and I hope you realize that there's never room to try and balance those scales. Don't do that. And always stand with the oppressed and just immediately stand with the person who's been harmed. Immediately stand with them and defend them and don't make them defend their themselves or
Give
justify, try and
give yeah, give them the benefit of the doubt. Like instead of giving the accused, instead of
yeah.
because they're always like, well, I want to hear his side of it. Yeah, I know. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
probably
immediately defend her.
yeah, yeah. The onus,
Yeah.
yeah, it should be on him to prove his innocence. Um,
Yes. When it comes to
it's
violence against a
yeah,
woman,
yeah. Because more often,
he
more often than not, the woman is correct. It's just reality. It's a sad reality, and and
if
and
you want
and
it to stop and you want it to happen less, then you need to then women need to feel safe to speak up and they need to feel
they do.
protected and defended. And if we can change that dynamic, then it will happen less because men won't be emboldened or feel like they can get away with it and they won't be defended. And that's important. And I will be so loud about it for the rest of my life for myself and anyone else because that's the only way this shit stops. But I know you got to go. And I am so proud to be a woman. I'm proud to be this woman. I'm grateful for what I've experienced and um, how I have alchemized it. I'm really proud of the voice that I have now. And if you're uncomfortable hearing my story, you should do some inner work and figure out why that makes you so uncomfortable. And
I'm
so, all the
proud
women
to
who've been through it, reach out to me if you ever need anything, but also tell your story. It's important.
proud to have you as a sister, Sophie, and you're one of the strongest people I know. And you've
Mm,
kept your heart soft, Sophie, despite all of it.
yeah.
You still in your poetry. There's a softness and awareness and just a gentleness, and it's beautiful to see. That despite the hardships and the insanity and the violence that has occurred, you've kept your heart soft, and I'm grateful for that.
Thank you, David. Well, you are such a champion of me, and it means everything to me. Thank you.
You're
Love
welcome.
you.
I love you too. So happy International Women's Day.
Yeah. Thank you. Good luck.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Get in line and settle down. Get.
The number you dialed is not a working number. Please check the number and dial again.
Goodbye.